welcome to Strengthening Families for a Better Future class. Tonight we're going to be talking about what is anxiety. People can feel anxiety about a lot of things. The first day of school, a job interview, a first date. And anxiety is the what if illness, I call it. I suffered from anxiety for a long time also. Was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Was thought I was dying sometimes. I was just panicking and going through a lot of different feelings. But I'm going to be talking about this to you tonight on a personal level because I completely understand it. But also, these classes are raising awareness classes, and we want to bring an awareness to you about anxiety and how to identify it, what are the symptoms, and how to cope with it. But if you find that you are being overwhelmed with anxiety, and if after tonight's class you can identify with the symptoms and need further help, as we always say on here at the classes, is that we encourage you to reach out and get help because there is help. So what exactly is anxiety? Anxiety is that feeling of the what if that makes your heart race and your palms sweaty, and there is a big difference between healthy anxiety and a paralyzing fear about the future. If you're experiencing anxiety, I'm going to tell you something, you're not alone. Many people experience anxiety. Anxiety disorders are among the most common mental health disorders in the U.S. You might think mental health, and a lot of people are afraid of that word, mental health. And I just want to tell you, that it's not a scary word. It's a part of, it's just like if you have a physical illness, diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, you would want to deal with it. You would want to get help. And anxiety falls under that category of mental health disorders. They affect over 40 million adults every single year, and kids experience them too. And that's why we also want to discuss, the how it affects children. And if you grew up with anxiety, the class title is Growing Up with Anxiety and How It Affects Us as Adults and How We Can Get Help, and that it never is too late. But this not only will help you, it'll also help you to identify and realize whether your children may be dealing with anxiety. These days, I don't think there is anybody who has not felt anxiety to a certain degree. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of things going on with what we're living. But it is a topic that is a lot more common than people might think. Over 25% of people between 13 and 18 live with anxiety daily. That's a big thing. So what are the symptoms of anxiety? It's different for everyone. And according to the Institute of Mental Health, some symptoms can include feelings of restlessness, feeling wound up or on edge, hyperactivity, trouble sleeping, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, irritability, muscle tension, difficulty controlling feelings of worry. It's something that daily people are living with. I hear people talk about it all the time, and sometimes in the early, stages of feeling a lot of anxiety, they may have been having it for a lifetime. They just didn't know what it was or what to call it. But it is very, very common, and it's very stressful, and it can lead you to a life of distress, to the point that it could affect you in your daily functioning and your daily coping. And it's very important that we seek help for anxiety and for depression. We will be talking about depression a little bit more also in this class, but right now, exactly, what is anxiety? And simply put, I call it the what if illness, because anxiety can get to a place out of control of excessive worrying, of a fear that really is not there. Many times people will experience anxiety in the form of like, what if I have a heart attack? What if, I fall? What if I don't have enough money? What if, and those things are not even happening yet. They can be very real fears, but nevertheless, it may not even be what's happening in the moment. So it's important to learn to get a hold of and a handle on stress, because stress is what will build up to the anxiety in our lives. And there are healthy coping mechanisms, ways that we can deal with anxiety. You know, number one is that we need to reach out and talk to somebody. If your mind is racing a million miles a minute and you need help in that moment, you know, you need to have a network of phone numbers, people that you can call out and reach out to talk to. And building a support network around you is very important, to talk to others about what's going on with you. And if you need to seek a counselor, I encourage you to ask for help from the staff, that you can get a referral, you know, to see a counselor, and that you can work through the feelings of anxiety that you're having. And another common recommendation is to try to blow off steam, you know, to exercise keeps coming up almost in every class. So obviously exercise is important for both your physical and mental health. If your thoughts are racing, you're feeling overwhelmed, because that's what anxiety is a racing thoughts, feeling overwhelmed. Try, you know, doing some physical exercise. Right now, again, it's hard to get out, but if you're able to go for a walk, you need to take those walks. And whatever you can do to get your body moving. Also, with anxiety, is same recommendations that I was giving in the stress class, is to sleep well. Set yourself up to get a solid 6 to 8 hours every night, finding a routine that works for you. So as you can see, you know, the coping mechanisms, the things that we need to develop in order to cope for different areas of stress, for different areas of depression, for different areas of anxiety, they're pretty much the same pattern. Healthy eating, healthy exercise, all of these things are very helpful and very important. And again, I want to emphasize, talk to a professional. Managing your mental health is part of managing your health. Finding the right doctor could help you, you know, get a hold of these thoughts or situations that lead you to your anxiety. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of anxiety. People are all different, and so anxiety, you know, can come in different forms. The most common anxiety disorders are, number one, generalized anxiety disorder. A generalized anxiety disorder is excessive worry that is disproportionate to normal anxiousness around upcoming life events, such as going to work or going to school. People can get to the point of being so overwhelmed with anxiety that it debilitates them, and they start to not be able to function, to get out to work. If they're in school, you know, to go to school. Right now we're all sheltered in, but you know, if you were experiencing difficulty in getting yourself to work, getting yourself to do the normal activities because of this overwhelming feeling of fear and worry, then there is a possibility that you could have been suffering from generalized anxiety disorder. Social anxiety disorder, number two, an intense fear um, of social interactions, making it hard to go out, to make friends, and to interact with others. It's a type of anxiety disorder. Another type, number three, is a panic disorder. Recurrent panic attacks that cause someone to change their behavior in order to avoid having them. Panic attacks are not your regular, like, you know, I'm just having a bad day type thing. They're an intense physical reaction to fear, often causing accelerated heart rate, sweating, and difficulty breathing. People who suffer from panic disorder end up in the ER very often. They think they're having a heart attack. You know, it's so intense for them. They think they're losing their mind. And it's a feelings, you know, that are very, very overwhelming. And this type of panic disorder, with the recurrent, they become more often and more common in their lives. It's time to get help. You know, it's very necessary to seek treatment for this type of disorder. Then there's also what is called separation anxiety disorder, and that's the fear of being separated from someone, and it usually causes an overwhelming worry that something might happen to them while they're away. So it's a kind of, you know, out of ordinary fear. You know, daily people separate. You know, they have to go their different ways to do things they have to do. But with separation anxiety disorder, there's a very deep fear of being separated from someone, and it causes them to worry that something's going to happen to that person. There's also what is called specific phobias. Specific phobias have to do with the intense fear about a specific thing or situation. like spiders, heights, flying. These are also anxiety producing, anxiety causing symptoms, that come uh, in the form of anxiety from specific phobias. Anxiety and depression. Sometimes people experience anxiety along with other mental health disorders. Many people also experience depression. And while people may experience both disorders, it's important to note that they have different symptoms and causes. Anxiety and panic. Think of anxiety and panic as cousins. They're linked. Though not always one of the same, it's common to have panic attacks as a fear response with anxiety disorders. It's also possible to have an occasional panic attack without having a disorder. Panic attacks can be scary. They often feel, like I said, like a heart attack. The good news about all of this is that they don't do any long term damage to your body. That doesn't mean they aren't a big deal. It's just very, very intense, and I don't wish it on anybody. I've experienced it in my life. Like I said, years back, I was suffering with a lot of anxiety in my own personal life, this panic disorder, anxiety disorder, and it's a very, very hard thing to cope with. I wish we were in person doing these classes. This is all new. We're doing these classes now this way during this time. And we started off that these were going to be in person. And one of my passions is to work, in person in the classroom. I feed off of the persons being there in the classroom, and I like them to feed off of also what I'm offering, because I like to be very transparent and share a lot of the experiences I went through in my personal life, what led me to educating myself and led me to becoming, the group facilitator, the teacher that I am today, and the life coach and helper that I am. But I do want to say that, anxiety is a very, very, very uncomfortable thing to deal with. So I would love for you to seek help as soon as possible if you feel that you're experiencing any of the things we're talking about in this class tonight. There is help, and again, it does feel terrible, but it is also treatable, and it will not kill us. I know that was the biggest fear, is not understanding, not knowing what I was feeling at the time, and thinking that I was literally dying or that I was going to die, and the what ifs over and over. I just want you to know that there is help, and there is light at the end of the tunnel of this if you would seek the help that you need. So that doesn't mean, like I said, that they aren't a big deal. They actually feel like you are having a heart attack, but I will let you know this: if it is anxiety, and there is no real heart issues, physical heart issues going on, you're not having a heart attack when you're feeling this. So anxiety and stress is totally normal and expected response to situations and changes in our lives. Anxiety can also manifest as a response to stress. The trick is identifying when healthy levels of stress are transitioning into another level of anxiety, especially around situations or events. What are the causes of anxiety? Well, one thing that causes anxiety, however, there is really not one thing. So we need to, when we ask that question, what is the one thing that causes anxiety? Well, simply put, there is not one thing. However, there are a few things that can increase the risk of having anxiety. And one of those is in the area of genetics. Researchers have found that people who develop anxiety disorders before, their early adulthood, like before the age of 18, 19, 20, they likely also to have a relative who lives with anxiety. It's very common that when you look at a family, dynamic where they are dealing with anxiety, they may say something like, my mom, suffered from this, my uncles, my aunts, my sister, my brother. It may be more than one of the family members that you will see, and we find that they develop anxiety disorders. Your children can develop anxiety disorders if you are dealing with anxiety disorders. It's important to identify also in children, to think back about your childhood, and you may have been suffering from anxiety for many, many years. And as you think about the experiences you were having with it, you want to build, a future for your children now. You want to educate yourself so that you can strengthen your family for a better future. So look for these same signs in children: overwhelming feelings of fear of things that might not be there. And like they say, the fear of something under the bed, and constant fearing something in the window, and fear of when they were in school, they're constantly telling you they don't want to go to school, they're afraid to go to school. You look for the same symptoms on their level, then you may be able to start to identify the symptoms of anxiety in your own children also. Another thing is of causing can come from brain chemistry. Science shows that stress can change the chemical balance in the brain. So it's no surprise that this chemical change can affect your moods. It's also found that causes can be through your personality. For some people, their personality can make them have a predisposition to certain anxiety disorders. Life events. Traumatic events can change our lives. They can also change our brains. Sometimes anxiety can manifest around large or challenging life changes that take place in our lives. I would think back of with my anxiety, it seemed like it had just came on suddenly, but it really just came on after years and years of intense stress in my life. My father, had brain tumors, and I grew up watching, my father ill and having seizures, and it was always scary, a scary situation. My mom suffered from some emotional, stresses and different battles with coping with her emotional state. And as a child, I grew up developing, this anxiety more and more and more. And my mom also suffered from anxiety, and other family members. So I personally can tell you that from experience that it is very common that anxiety can run in the family. And it may be that if you're suffering from anxiety, as I mentioned, your children can also. So what do we do with treatment for treatment and prevention? Anxiety can feel overwhelming. It's also highly treatable, and some common treatments can be, the simple techniques of deep breathing that are taught. Focusing your breathing to calm and center yourself. When people, call me or talk about that they're having an anxiety attack, the first thing we're going to recommend is that they learn to center themselves and to take deep breaths, and then to release those breaths and to repeat those breathing to calm and center themselves. Also, one of the ways to prevent, is to figure out how to have less stress, or to stress less. Stress management techniques such as exercise, meditation, mindfulness can help manage stress. And again, sleeping well. Get some sleep. Maintaining a regular sleep schedule can regulate your mood and your stress. And also, when you feel it is so overwhelming and you need help, talk to a professional. A therapist may be able to help you manage your triggers and symptoms. Therapists and doctors may also prescribe medications that can help manage your mental health. It's always okay to ask for help. In fact, asking for help is the brave thing to do. You need to be looking for whatever you can do to help yourself. So try talking to your doctor, learn more about how you are feeling and ways to take care of your mental health.